Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 69. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Today's guest, this is our good friend Ray. Did the introduction. Me and Ray go back a lot of years from OJ's and Bocycle. I bought a motorcycle off Mr. Ray. So that's how this came to be. So please go ahead, name and who you are.
Okay, I'm Megan, and I am co-owner of Mondays Plant Café, and it's in Bridgeland, and this is where I know Ray. This is our connection. He eats there every single day, so shout out to Ray.
This is great. We're just Ray's going to love the start of this show.
Like, this is dedicated to me.
Yeah, totally. And like we were talking about off camera, I'm like deep into the restaurant world in my past, so this is going to be a really cool chat just because I love talking to restaurateurs. Because their path is usually unorthodox.
It's wonky.
Yeah. So the gist of the show is I like the guests to go back as far as they want to go. You know, where they grew up, how
when
they grew
I was
up.
Born.
Yeah. So for me, if somebody asked me that question, I'd be like, man, I don't really have a memory till I was like 6, 7. So
Totally.
Go back as far as you want to go. So
Okay.
how you grew up, where you grew up, where your inspiration was, and we'll just get into it. And then we'll kind of weave a path to where we are today.
To where we are now. Okay, well, I grew up in the Okanagan, and I guess my restaurant is very health focused. So I guess that's the running theme through my life, because I think growing up in the Okanagan, you're exposed to, the process of food being grown, since it's so fertile and, a nice place.
Yep.
So we had a bunch of fruit trees on my property, and my parents did everything from the garden, and it totally inspired that type of eating, and just having knowledge of how our food is grown and why that's important.
Did you know that when you were a youngster?
I think not explicitly, but I think no, I should maybe. My parents definitely we talked about healthy food.
No way.
And my parents say that this is probably where I was supposed to end up, because I was always looking at the back of labels at the store and just wanting to know the health aspect of it. So I hate to admit that a big inspiration, I went to university for nutrition, and a big inspiration to that was The Biggest Loser television show.
Oh, yeah.
Which is I don't know if it's really healthy. But I just kind of love the concept of, putting in health into our system, and it's maybe not in the way that they did it, but I definitely felt like it was inspiring to see, people gain health. And so that was an inspiration for me to then go into nutrition, which I did at the U of A.
Okay, we're going to slow you down.
Too fast?
No, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you there. I got more questions before you get to university.
Anyway, I liked fruit, and then I went to university.
It's interesting though, right? Because growing up in the Okanagan, having fruit trees in your backyard and a giant garden, that's different than the way we grew up around here. So it's what kind of trees were in your...
I guess I didn't know at the time that was unique, for sure. I was
all your friends had...
Yeah. I mean, and just down the street from us, huge orchard, everywhere, actually, huge orchards. But that's where I spent lots of time, was just in the surrounding fruit tree orchard. Yep. And so we had... My dad's going to love this, just promoting his garden that he worked so hard on. We had a big vegetable garden.
What's big? I want some,
big,
I want to picture this.
I don't know, square footage. So
let's say a main floor of a house is 1,000 square feet. A regular, 2-bedroom kind of
probably
square.
1,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. Ish. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had all of our vegetables and things, but the fruit trees, there's 2 cherry trees, 2 apple trees, an apricot tree. And something else that I probably should know. Plums?
Crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, it was cool. And I definitely thought that was how we all did the life. Everyone was just getting to have the fresh fruit from their tree in their yard. Yep. So I think that was just kind of the experience in the Okanagan, and for lots of my friends too. That was just how you grew up. And it was always abundantly available, and fruit stands when you go anywhere. So I mean, I reflect on it now and I'm like, damn, that was so nice. It's what I aspire to have is my life now, that availability,
Do you, when did you realize that? When did you start being able to reflect on this and think back, wow, that was very unique?
I think as you become an adult. No, probably when I went to Edmonton for university and I had never been. And I was like, this place sucks.
That was your first, leaving the Okanagan, you went to Edmonton?
For school, I had, my parents loved traveling and things, so we were exposed. But I think when I'm living on my own, as a freshly minted adult, and I'm like, oh, this place is not fertile and nice like the Okanagan, and I don't have the abundance of that freshness that I'm used to.
Yeah.
So I think that'd probably be my first, time that I
You're like, oh,
realized it
what
was
I
nice
had.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think just, being in Calgary now and in the restaurant scene, I can really respect our local farmers that we have here and just the process in getting food to the grocery store.
Yep.
And so I think like now I can understand that, deeper.
It was different.
Yeah.
What else did the childhood look like? In the Okanagan, I feel like it's a spectacular place to grow up, besides being gray.
Yeah, good. And I had great parents and, they're just like
What'd they do?
good influences. They're both health inspectors in different realms. But yeah, we just had a good active childhood, super outdoorsy.
Lots of home cooked meals, like dinner on the table.
All the time. Yeah, mom's such a good cook. And that would be another source of inspiration because now I cook all the time.
Yep.
And I don't think there was ever expectation to get in the kitchen and learn. So I actually think that I learned probably post 20 years old how to cook, which is interesting that now that's what I'm doing as a job.
Do you think it's also just being like, at a young age being exposed to those, watching it?
Totally.
Like we're picking things up as we're like youngsters, and then all of a sudden it makes sense when we get older.
If you think about people that don't like to cook, I'm sure that their parents didn't cook much. I have a feeling that that's probably what their childhood looked like. So yeah, my mom was always in there. Like she would make all her own dressings and just everything. Yeah.
And was like family dinners, was it a thing?
Family dinners, yes. I don't know what your experience was with family
you.
dinners, but we had to sit down for our family dinners.
Yeah. And clockwork, was it pretty like?
Yeah, we were regimented. We were like 5:30 clockwork. We're here. We're talking about our days, which I fully resented at the time. But now I'm like, oh, it's so nice. But at the time, no. So yeah, it was a good family unit and a good upbringing. I have one sister and hated her. Sorry, Aaron, but now we like each other. So yeah, it was a great childhood.
It's interesting, like those family dinners. My family was kind of the same way. Mom was an amazing cook, and it was pretty regimented. Like time. I have a younger brother, a younger sister.
Yep.
Dad was a fireman.
Yep.
And so these dinners were, if Dad wasn't around.
Yeah.
But it was always a set time. If Dad wasn't around, dinners were a little loose, and if we got in trouble, we were like in bed by 6:30.
Oh no.
In Italy, like 5:30, and then if Dad was around, it was a little more civilized. But then to your point, I'm not a great cook by any stretch.
Really?
But I can appreciate, and I will cook more often than not.
Yeah. See,
So
it's like
just
probably
pick it
part
up.
of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
At least you're like, I could do this.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some people that just eat out for every single meal.
I think there's
Lots of people.
way more people than we think.
Probably. Yeah.
You take for granted, I think, being able to actually have that experience and then like make your own food. So you get to Edmonton. What are you taking?
So I'm taking.
It's Edmonton.
I know. The reason in going there was because I got scouted to play field hockey,
Okay.
which is like uber popular in BC.
So sports was
sports was a thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
loved sports. Actually, really loved sports. Grew up doing like triathlons and swimming and.
Oh, let's go back there.
Okay, so my family is very activity focused, which is in alignment with eating healthy.
Yep.
And I think the people of the Okanagan definitely aspire to be healthy. I think it's just a thing.
Yep.
There's summer for so much of the year, and so there's a lot of outdoor stuff.
Yep.
And so my parents actually do Ironman triathlons
no
because
way.
they're crazy.
And still?
Yeah, my mom still does. Yeah.
And they did it when you were like younger?
Yeah, they did. They weren't doing Ironmans when I was younger. Oh, I think they did an Ironman actually when I was in grade 12, which like when your parents are training for an Ironman, I don't think people know. They're gone for like all day. So it's a great time to get into trouble. Like,
Crazy.
I'd sleep over places or people would sleep over at my place.
Yeah.
Parents are gone at like 5 a.m. So I don't know if they know that, but it's a bad time to do Ironmans. But we grew up watching them be
Like
active.
very athletic.
Super athletic. Yeah.
And so did they put you into things? Did you guys kind of have choices, or was it just like try everything?
It was a try everything, but I think we were definitely, I don't know if push is the right word, but from as far back as I can remember, there was an expectation that you would swim and like you're going to be good at swimming because there's a big lake. And so I bet initially we were putting into swimming just simply because of survival.
It's a life skill.
It's a life skill,
Yep.
especially living there. So then both my sister and I competed in swimming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you still swim?
You know what's funny? We did when I was young, we had 2-a-day practices and I was like, fuck this. I hate it. And I think as an act of rebellion, I just didn't for many years. And I'd occasionally, like when I go back to visit, I'll swim in the lake and that's like so joyous. It's like the best. But outside of that, I was like, resent being at the pool, resent getting my hair wet, like had a total aversion. And lately I've been doing it again and I'm loving it. Truly.
What do you, I'm like an amateur, like I'm a water baby. Love it. Didn't do anything competitive, just did all the colors, bronze medallion, bronze cross, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd love it. And I swam for the first time a couple of weeks ago for years.
Right.
And it's just this like, it's so hard.
I know.
But it's just this like, you can hear it. There's no phone, there's no music. It's your breath.
Yep.
It's like the splash.
Right.
And it's just this like cathartic thing.
It really is. And I can appreciate that now. And I've said that as I've recently picked it up again. I'm like, I feel more free in here and just more, I guess free is the word, or at peace.
Yeah.
But if you aren't great at swimming and it's not natural, to me, I'm like, I love it. I feel confident. I can like get into my stroke.
You can go back and forth.
I'm tired. And,
Yep.
and especially if I'm doing like drills and, working it, I'm tired.
Yep.
But sometimes I can just swim and I'm like, this is lovely. And I don't feel tired. So I can imagine if you're not great at swimming and you're just like battling the water,
You don't
then
have a
it's
heart
less,
attack.
less peaceful. Yeah.
Does your where does your head wander when you're swimming? It's since you've been picking it up lately.
It's the same thing as meditating when you're meditating and you're like, oh my God, how'd I get over here? Why am I in that sector of my mind?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in swimming. I'm like, I didn't know I was needing to think about that. Or just like every worry you ever had is probably, what you
bubbles
think about.
up.
Yeah.
So growing up, obviously you kind of rattled off a bunch of things that you did, which are obviously serious. So kind of go into some of those athletic adventures you had.
My God. Well, I played soccer, like on my high school soccer team, and I played field hockey seriously enough, I guess, to get scouted.
Yep.
And what happens in the field hockey world is, and I'm not sure if this is in every world with scholarships, but you have to actually make the team in
Before you
order
get
to
your scholarship?
So you like get offered this, but like contingent on going to a tryout and making sure that you're good enough, I suppose.
Yep.
So I, shortly before I was going to Edmonton, blew out my knee, my ACL, and didn't have the opportunity to even play.
Yep.
But that was the original intent in going to Edmonton. And I did this convenient knee injury like right before I was going.
Did you were you like Alberta team, like field hockey, like that kind of caliber?
I played like, because I'm not making an excuse for myself, but in BC it's very competitive. So I didn't play on the BC team, but I played on like the regional, which was
still real deal.
It's real.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So blow your knee out.
Yeah, blow my knee out, but I'm still like, okay, I'm going to Edmonton.
Yep. And what were you going to take?
Nutrition. Yeah. And
was the nutrition thing like in high school? Did you always know what you were going to?
I think because of having that, interest in The Biggest Loser and reading nutrition labels and just knowing that you're so directionless when you're a teenager. So I at least had like some idea of what was interesting to me. And I guess that was it.
Yep.
And so it was always a thing. And like I said, my parents wouldn't have been surprised.
Yep.
But I don't know if I knew seriously what I was doing.
Did they, you grew up in a wildly athletic house.
Yeah.
Like triathlon is like,
It's no joke.
No
Oh
joke.
my God. And I know I did them. They're crazy.
So, and this is no dig. When you're growing up in that family, you're that athletic. Are you actually, are you counting calories? Are you worried about that thing at a young age?
No.
Like performance wise or anything?
You know what? The first time I had any kind of concept that food is fuel, or like I could, construct a diet that would best support my athletic pursuits was probably in field hockey. I had this like crazy Icelandic, is that what we call them? Icelandic coach. And he was just like what I perceived was out there. And he would make us, after our practices or games, we'd have chocolate milk. And he was explaining the benefits of that and why, I can't even remember now why chocolate milk is like the thing that we refuel with.
Yep.
But he's the first to talk about that. And I found that like very interesting, that I was like, refueling. So that was probably the first time I had even a concept of it. But I do think like my parents probably modeled, what proper fueling is.
Yeah.
Don't know if they fully know. So, you run the risk of it becoming toxic too, if you're so athletic, but also trying to eat healthy. There's like an inherent risk that it could be toxic, but I didn't feel that at the time,
When did you do your first triathlon?
Oh, like 11 years old.
No way.
Yeah.
Like a full on?
Oh yeah. I swam across the lake when I was 8 years old. There's this race in Kelowna where you swim.
Yep.
It's called Swim Across the Lake.
Yep.
It's like 3 kilometers, and everyone, just like a huge group of people. We swim across the lake, and that's an event. And I think I was probably 8 doing that one, and then 11 or so or younger doing a triathlon.
Crazy.
But they're all like relative, when you do now, like the distance, I'm sure I guess it's relative, but when I look at it now, I'm like, aw.
Do you remember what the distances were?
It's like and I shouldn't knock it. I'm like, probably couldn't do it now, but it was like,
most people can't.
I know. It was like probably like a 500 meter swim with like a 5 kilometer bike and then like a 1 kilometer run.
What kind of bike were you on?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Like
some
an old school,
little mini road bike.
Road bike, yeah.
Yeah. Something cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's a to be around that kind of athleticism and is a way different upbringing.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have known that. I think now I can see that, and they're still doing things like that. And when my mom is talking about her training schedule, I'm like, y'all's are crazy. Like,
yes, they're crazy. Do you also, is it like a check and a balance in your life at all? Has it been over the years?
In terms of like how much I'm outputting? And
just even like keeping health and fitness and nutrition like somewhat top of mind?
Totally. And I've only in the last maybe like 5 years realized that like it's not like I wouldn't say it's a bad relationship with it by any means, but it's almost an expectation that like I'm going to be active in the day, probably every day, or like that's what you do, And so I think I've reflected, and my job has me on my feet, and that's activity. But if it's not like a formal activity or exercise, that can feel like I didn't do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I do check with myself, and I'm like, should you be?
What am I feeling here?
Should you? Like, do you need to do that?
Yeah.
And I think having the examples of people that are always training for an event, which I think is different than, because I think it requires a little bit more. You have goals to meet. You have, training sessions that you have to do. It's all set out.
Yeah.
So I can kind of separate that is for a specific event. Doesn't necessarily need to be a lifestyle,
Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting now as an adult for sure.
Yeah. There's all these balances, right? Like to be like the everyday athlete, but own your own business and is like, you need a lot of time.
Yeah.
So Edmonton, blow your knee out.
Like blow my knee out. Still going to Edmonton because what else am I going to do? I'm going to the school and
nutrition.
Yep. And it's a really hard program, which I didn't expect. And I first of all, I didn't know that it was like I don't think you do know these things when you're young. Maybe people did better check-ins than I did on what you should expect like out of your program. But I don't even think I knew it was a Bachelor of Science, which was very
bit of an oversight.
It was a bit of an oversight, and I was like, chemistry. I'm interested in food, so it was really hard. And at U of A, I don't know did you go to university?
Oh, funny you ask.
Tell me.
No, I dropped out of Mount Royal 3 times. And it's like,
you get it? It's way too hard.
The only reason I say that is because it's like this ongoing thing in my shtick. I'm just out.
Yep.
It always comes up, and I'm happy to say, like, God, no, I hate school.
Right? But don't you think nowadays it's so much more acceptable, if you will, to just not go to school? I'm like, I think the Gen Z generation is like, I don't need school. I'm famous through TikTok. I don't know.
And that's part of it. Right? I think there's more creative options out there. Back then, there was more structure. There's engineers, doctors, lawyers.
100%.
There's specific things you need a piece of paper to do.
Totally.
And I think the creative options weren't there. So we just couldn't see them. So we didn't know.
Exactly.
So I agree. Like,
and you felt like a failure if you didn't complete the, conventional route.
Totally.
So didn't know that it was science-based, and it was very challenging. And at U of A, at least, they graded you on the curve. And so you're marked against your peers. And that was also an oversight, because that's crazy when a lot of people used it as their like pre-med route.
Crazy.
And so it's just like so many type A people within the program, and me too. Then I developed into that, and like just had a wealth of stress in my existence. But I completed the degree. And
you did, eh?
I did it.
I thought you were going the other way.
No, I did it.
Wow, good for you.
But it was challenging, and definitely like reworked my nervous system into some poorly developed stress management system.
Were you good in school?
Yeah, I mean, not my first year.
But I mean, like high school.
I think I was all right. I was fine. Yes, I got like good enough grades.
Yep.
But I definitely paid little attention and valued my social life over my grades, and didn't try.
Yep.
And then this proved to be not a great strategy when in my first year of university, I was put on academic probation.
Oh, you were like,
you were sliding. It was just having fun. And it wasn't fun when I got put on the probation, but I cleaned it up, and I ended up, leaving university with good marks. So
surprising that you actually like. I'm sure there was moments that you're just like, this is not good.
I'm sure everyone wondered after the academic probation. Yes, I'm sure it was definitely, I was like, is this for me?
Yeah.
But I think I just needed to have some more discipline and not have so much fun and figure it out. So yeah, I did.
Are you working as you're going to university, or what are you doing?
Yeah, actually. Good questions. These are things I haven't like thought about in
good
so
questions.
long. Yeah, they are. Good. Oh my God, you do this for a living? Wow.
No, I don't. I do this for
I
fun.
Get it. Shoot. What'd I do? Oh, I served. We were talking off camera about how my only experience in the restaurant industry was serving at a restaurant, Joey's in Edmonton. So I did that. I would cry before most of my shifts because they were just too late, and I didn't want to. I wanted to study, or like I was stressed. So I didn't love that. And I did work in the mornings. I would work at a daycare. I'd get there at like 6:30, and then I'd go to school, and then I'd work at another daycare after school. And I had some other side gigs throughout, but I don't even remember. Yep. But yes, I worked the whole time through university, and probably added to my stress.
Just put it all together.
Go figure.
So what happens after university? Where you? So you got this fancy degree.
Yes. Oh, here's a job I worked. This kind of paints the picture of my story. The girl I own the restaurant with, her name's Allie, and her and I met in university. Okay. We ended up living together.
Same program, different program?
Different program, totally different school, actually. Her background is in broadcast television, this is an interesting melding of ourselves, but we became buddies, and we worked for this promotions company and we both worked for them. And she moves out to Toronto with this promotions and marketing company. And it's like my side thing. It's her side thing too, but she took it a little seriously, went out there, and she could do her videography stuff. Meanwhile, I'm just like harassing people on the streets to play my activation, so her role was a little more serious. She moves to Toronto, and I'm pretty aimless myself after university. I travel for a long time, and I work for this marketing company. I work in research at the U of A.
Because you didn't know what you wanted to do with this thing?
Usually, this is what happened. Usually within the nutrition degree, you would do a dietetic internship after to become a dietitian. Okay. And you go through what's called a MMA. It's a multi-mini interview process. Was the same that they used for med school. Okay. And you do a bunch of different things, including like case studies that you're timed on, and you have like how we're sitting right now. I have to plead the case of what I think with this particular case study, and just anyway, it's a lot of pressure. And if you get through that, you go on to do your internship, which is a year post-grad, unpaid, etc. But you get placed, you do clinical placements, and you become a dietitian. And I didn't get in. And then I gave up on that dream and was like, what do I want to do? I don't even know if I want to do that, essentially. And
which gets uncomfortable.
Gets uncomfy.
Because you're like,
you're
into this.
Totally. And I'm like, oh no, when I have a degree in nutrition, what else do I apply it towards if I'm not being a dietitian? Yep.
Like it's a real internal conversation.
It was.
Yeah.
And at the time, my priorities were like, I'm young and I'm fun. And I think I had just got out of a long relationship, and I was like, what doing? What am I doing? So I applied for a master's of public health at that point. I've also been living at home at this point randomly, and like, I don't want to live with my parents, and that's too much. And so Allie is like, oh, you want to come? You're going to come to Toronto to do your master's. You should come. I'm house sitting for our boss in Toronto at this promotions and marketing company. You should just come stay here for a couple months. And I have no plans. So I go, and a couple months turns into years in Toronto. And Allie and I are having so much fun, still working for this company. We're traveling, we're doing all the things, but I'm still looking to like apply my degree and maybe become an adult and do something adulty. And Allie is a pretty serial entrepreneur type. And so she pitches this idea to me because it's very popular in Toronto, the plant-based movement at this time. This is like 2014.
Okay.
And I'm seeing it with my own eyes. Toronto is totally going vegan, and it seems really, really popular and trendy.
What'd you think of Toronto?
I loved it.
No way.
I know. I thought I'd hate it. When I was going there, I was like, big city,
Where'd you
gross.
live? Where's this place?
Everywhere. We did we shared a bed for a year. Like it was
glamorous,
just we were doing the young person thing. It was a fun time. But we were all over. I thought Toronto was so cool.
No way.
Maybe because of the phase of my life that I was in, where I was like, no responsibilities,
and still
I
that
just have
promotion
fun.
company, so you're
Totally.
at events all the time, meeting people,
At events,
all these
exactly.
things.
And I think Toronto was so diverse. I loved that. I loved the food scene. And you could be whoever you want in Toronto. And maybe I felt that. Maybe I was like, I can reinvent myself, and I'm out of this relationship. I'm out of the structure of my, school program, which was like intense. And so maybe I just felt a little free, but that would probably inform why I liked it. A lot of people don't like it. It sounds like you don't.
So I was there for 11 months.
Not
It's
your
like
jam.
2001-ish. Worked for this big web design company, made no money. Lived in a basement suite, this shithole.
Of course.
So you had no money, couldn't go out. And.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Hated it.
It was just a shitty experience. That all being said,
Yeah.
the coolest thing about Toronto was the music scene.
Right? There's so much.
Yeah.
We always went to live music.
Yeah. It was like, so I found this DJ in Toronto that was, he was playing a very similar style to DJ Rice from Calgary.
Oh.
And I found him in Toronto. I was like, holy shit. So then I just followed him around every weekend, whatever gig he was
His
playing.
groupie?
Yep. I'm just this random guy from Calgary, no friends. I would show up to these.
He's calling security on you. He's
No,
like, this guy's back again.
It's like, I'm not like Ray creepy.
Sorry, Ray.
Sorry, Ray. But that was it. So I
Yeah.
found this guy, and he was very like welcoming, and introduced me to this, like where I could find the music and who were the artists. And so anyways, I left Toronto, and then when I left, I bought $700 worth of records.
Oh my God.
I was like, I'm going to be a DJ.
I have a career.
And then moved to Calgary.
And
Moved
then
back
did you
to
become
Calgary.
a DJ?
Yeah, I DJ'd around town
amazing.
for like 8-9 years.
I never knew.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah,
He
so anyways.
inspired you to go on that path. That's
so
amazing.
so if I didn't go to Toronto, that wouldn't have happened. So
We're all just placed where we're supposed to. The
Yes.
universe knows. That's cool.
So I can't rip Toronto
No, you can't.
all that
It
much.
provided you your path.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, so that's why.
And me too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. Every time someone says Toronto, I always get kind of riled up because I fucking hate it.
I hate that place.
Yeah.
I get why people hate it. I'm like, it's a big old city with like kind of rude people. And it's just like, I don't know. But I felt like if you went like a little underground, which sounds like you did.
Yeah.
So still hated it.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was so much to offer and you could be who you wanted. I could be a different person Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I could be accommodated,
Do you think you could go back there now and enjoy it?
No.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. I know it was a select time in my
It was
life.
like the perfect time.
Perfect time.
Yeah.
And I know Allie and I talk about it all the time. When we moved to Calgary on a whim to open this place. And I felt weirdly sad about leaving Toronto. I did not expect it. I was like, oh, love this place. I can't believe we're leaving. And it was nice to leave on a high because I left Edmonton on a real low, was like, fuck this place. And I'm never coming back.
I'm out.
I'm out forever. And didn't have great feelings about Kelowna. And like, I feel I've left most places kind of ready to go, and in leaving Toronto not ready to go, it holds a special place. The memory is locked in as like only good. It never got to be bad. So
so sorry I interrupted you. Tangent. 2014.
2014. Oh, the plant-based movement.
Yeah. So you guys are, so you're seeing things? Are you actually going to try things?
Yeah.
And before we go there, are you, when you're deciding to eat out over all the years, were you making like, do you make conscious decisions to like source, to find interesting places or specific styles or?
So yeah, interesting you say. Before, I guess to rewind, my style of eating has actually always, even through university, has been pretty vegan.
Yep.
I didn't think I even knew what vegan was, but I just like didn't really like eating meat, and I cooked in that fashion.
Yep.
And I was doing like black bean brownies when it wasn't cool, you know, and I felt like inspired to do that. It felt healthy to me.
Yep.
So restaurant choices would usually reflect that. Or I love trying like, you know, different ethnic cuisines. Yep. So always down to eat some weird shit. And I think Toronto really catered to that. Yeah. And Ali and I actually, we lived in Portugal for a little bit within this time, and a huge inspiration for us. And the local aspect was, we were at an eco lodge, and it was just way in the mountains of Portugal, and they grew absolutely everything, including like the lamb that we killed and ate for dinner. Yep. And the olives were put into olive oil that was used for cooking. So sourcing, which reminded me of childhood, directly from the source was inspiring and kind of fueled our concept for what we have here. Was
that trip the start of it? Like the conversation?
That probably was. I think we toyed around. Like Toronto, I think, inspired the vegan concept.
Just because it's coming up.
You can see it like cool.
It's going to be a thing.
Yeah. And she's got a mind that she's like, we should capitalize on this and make a business. And that is not, I cannot say that's my brain. I'm not like maybe not as risky. I don't know. But I just like didn't think it would be a business.
You would have never gone there.
I probably wouldn't have. I don't know if I'm like entrepreneurial at heart.
Yep.
Like I can like it and appreciate it now, and it's nice working for yourself. But I mean, like, maybe Ali probably finds it exciting to like make your decisions like that. I have like extreme anxiety about decisions, and like, you know, so I'm like, I don't know if that's exactly, but that's why we're a good team, because she goes there. But yeah, I think the Portugal trip really kind of nailed it in for us. That
what year was this?
That was probably in 2015, and then we opened up 2016.
So you leave Toronto.
You leave Toronto
to come to Calgary to start this business.
So we started this like pre-planning. She pitches me the idea
in Toronto,
okay. And I'm kind of like,
what does this look like? What does the pre-planning pitch look like?
I think I was actually at home in Kelowna, and I get like a super casual Facebook message from her, which we have it saved. And I'm like, why were we communicating through Facebook? Or maybe I was traveling. I have no idea. But I'm like, that seems so strange for our relationship. But okay. And she's super casual about it. She's like, hey. Actually, she says something like, I saw this place in Toronto here that makes black bean brownies, and I thought of you and that you like that stuff. And I think that we should start a cafe that's vegan and has black bean brownies on the menu. Something like that, like super casual. And I said casually, like not thinking about it, like I'm in. And then we really did it, which is so psycho.
What does that mean? Did it? So what is it? So then, I like to understand the journey, because that's where all the
and then we just popped up here, and that's it.
Yeah.
We I guess I'm like trying to think of.
You talked about it, and you'd like pen to paper. You draw it out. Is this like
not initially? I think it was just a loose idea for a minute, and then in being directionless, I think. We both were like, well, we have this one direction. It's that thing we talked about. And from there, we did start planning in Toronto, and kind of cute. We had our very first meeting, which was like so hilarious to do with a friend. We had this structured meeting where we took meeting minutes.
No way.
And
why'd you do that?
I don't know.
Because you thought that's how like businesses
totally
operated?
Yeah. We were like, is this professional of us?
Are we doing this right?
We like sat across from each other at this, I know. It's so funny to reflect on the things that you do, because I'm like, what? Why? Stupid. But we had a meeting, and we had like our pen and paper and
at a restaurant.
Yeah, and it was called I'm going to fuck this up, but I think it was called the restaurant, the like little cafe in our like wayward neighborhood in Toronto where we were just there for like 3 weeks, like couch surfing. We forever had our password was the name of the cafe where it all started, which now I forget. But it was just like a really cute beginning. And we both had no idea about business. I knew some food stuff and she is very smart and knew stuff from her own, being smart.
Yep.
But like we know nothing about business. We truly know nothing. We also don't know much about the food industry aside from like both having separate gigs, serving. So we create this concept, which hilariously stayed a little true to form. I think we just dreamed together. We were like, oh my God, we should have it in a little house and maybe we can live up in the upstairs of the house and we can have the restaurant in the basement and had this concept that we kind of have now.
Yep.
Our cafe's in a house.
Yep.
We don't live there, but it's funny how that actually came to be.
Do you give that any thought about like saying it out loud, putting it out to the universe and it actually plays out?
I'd like to say that I put more conscious effort into that. Yeah. I do trust the universe and, make an effort to align my intentions with what I want. But at the time, that wouldn't have been a conscious effort.
But now to look back on it and just be like,
that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever lately, been in a situation where you're thinking something and you actually start talking about it and then it plays out?
Not that I can think of. But it is cool to reflect on if I didn't make this literal left turn and end up at that place, this would have never happened. And much to us speaking about our journeys, if you never were in Toronto. So I give a lot of reflective credit to those type of happenings. And it's cool to see just all those things that, if that happened a different way, we wouldn't be here. So that's why I trust the universe, because I'm like, we're supposed to be where we're at,
Which is, it's comforting to be able to say that.
It is.
So after your little meeting notes, what's actually...
God, a bunch of nonsense because we're blind leading the blind. We are just literally, we're just throwing out ideas. And I think actually I credit Allie for totally creating a structure because I just was probably following her structure of what this is what this looks like. And maybe we should create a menu. And I don't have a satisfying answer of what exactly we talked about and did in that time. But we did decide we should do a Kickstarter to fund our restaurant. Wow. And that was completely arbitrary because I don't know if you're familiar with the crowdfunding Kickstarter. But basically you're asking people for money in exchange for incentives, and they have incentive categories that are bigger the bigger the donation.
It'd be like cookies for life for $100.
Literally free coffee. Or ours was get a menu item named after you, which we actually had to stick to. So some of our menu items were the lesson Peter, which people were what is that?
They're donator number 1, 2, 3.
Totally. So we set out this goal with the Kickstarter, which you have to do upfront, and if for those that don't know, you have to meet your goal, your funding goal, in a 30-day campaign.
Okay.
And if you don't, then everybody gets sent their money back. Okay. And at this point, you've probably invested money in because you have to create a little, campaign video, and you have to put a lot of effort into it. And
do you need a website, logo, any of that stuff?
I'm not sure we did, but probably.
Yeah.
So you have to, you put a lot of probably money and just mostly effort in.
Yep.
And we put our goal to this arbitrary $38,000, which in hindsight is so modest to start a restaurant.
Yeah.
But it totally displays how naive we are at the time and still. But we meet our funding goal
in 30
and
days.
We're still,
so there's $38,000 in 30 days.
Yeah.
And this is just sourcing your own personal networks?
So you you go through your immediate network and, this is it's good to have lots of Facebook friends because that's your main platform. I think at the time I'm was there? Yeah, there was Instagram, but you're doing it through Facebook and through Kickstarter has its own website. And I think people
just search opportunities.
I believe people do that. And so maybe you do, but I've never gone to Kickstarter and been just browsing. What could I put money towards in Calgary? So a lot of people we didn't know in Calgary donated money. And it'd be $25, but I'm why would you do that, Amanda, who doesn't know us?
Do you know these people?
Most of them. Some of them, yes. I shouldn't say most of them. Majority, yes. Like, like my parents, which I'm like,
but these
don't
randoms.
patronize me.
But they're randoms.
But the randoms, some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really humbling to have support like that, because it'd be like Frank, like our promotions and marketing company, Frank, the CEO, who I'm not sure knows a damn thing about me, is donating $1,000, and I'm like, that's sweet, Frank. You know, so it was super, humbling. We felt really grateful, and then we did that while we were in Toronto. And now we have to find a place in Calgary.
Now you got 38 grand.
Now we have 38 grand, and we're like,
you got to do something.
Where do we spend? What's a priority? No idea. No idea. So we have come up with a name for ourselves. And at the time we're called Raw Eatery and Market, for kind of unknown reasons. I'm not sure even why we chose that. I think we did think that we were going to do mostly raw food.
Okay.
I think we must have, because that's what we stuck to. And the eatery is the restaurant portion, and the cafe or the market is what we hoped to be, like a locally sourced market with, supporting our local people. And that's where we spent a lot of our money, was our inventory towards this market, which we learned the hard way that like things expire when they're not selling, and you have bought so much of it. Yep. So we learned a lot of things the hard way, but we come to Calgary. It's a long story. We don't have, we have a place, and we have all of our branding towards this place. We've had this place inspected. The rent was like 12 grand. It was a place in Kensington.
Wow.
And we're so naive. We're like, 12 grand would be so easy for us to afford every month. Like, truly, what are you thinking? That's a lot of money. And we thought we'd have like some yoga that we could sublet. And
it was like a big vision.
It was a large vision. And I'm proud of us for thinking that.
Yep.
But I'm like, practically, I don't know. And I think a lot of our support, network was like, are you sure? And we were like, definitely. It's not going to fail. So thank God that this landlord actually did end up pulling out, because he was like, you are young babies and have no experience, and I just don't trust that this will be successful. So I'm glad he did that.
Yes.
And we get out of this meeting where we're like, oh, we have all this money. We're like, we've dedicated everything to this business, and now it's not happening. And this is in Kensington. We walk by on our way home to our home that we now have an apartment here and no source of income. And we're like, oh, this little spot says for lease. Let's just call the number. I think the guy comes like immediately. And within that same day, we have signed a lease in a new place that we had no intention of being in. We're completely rolling with the punches. It's in a basement. It's not ideal. It's less money, but like still a lot of money. And then we stay there for 5 years.
No way.
Yeah. And
where was it?
It's right in Kensington. I always reference Peacock Boutique, but that's a women's clothing consignment store, so I'm not sure if everyone knows. But it's right across from like Hayden Block.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In the basement there.
Yeah.
Was there a wine bar there? Isn't there a wine bar close to it?
It's across the street. Like, where the Juco Juice was?
Yep.
It's, where Pulcinella is?
Yep.
It was right next door to that, east of that.
Okay. So like basement, not ideal for foot traffic.
No.
But there is people around there.
Yeah.
So it's not a horrible idea.
And we like not weirdly, should be supporting ourselves more than that. We boomed, like for us, like we were in the Herald, and like we had lineups out the door, and we just like, it was so...
Why?
It was so makeshift. It was so funny because we had no experience. Also, we are just also like people that like to sometimes cook in our life. At this point, I'm holding a knife wrong. Like, I don't know how I've served at Joey's like occasionally. It's like bad. Like we're learning on the fly. Like I remember we had our tables set up at this spot where we were prepping in front of people. And just like, honestly, so makeshift. And I'm like trying to take someone's order, and I like slice my finger open with a bread knife and just bleeding, and like no idea how to, what now? There's a lineup at the door. Like we were just.
What were you selling?
At this point, we're selling salads, and like vegan food.
Yep.
And we still have some of the same menu items from the beginning. So I'm like, we maintained our concept.
So this thing opens up. It kind of catches fire quicker than you expected.
Totally.
Caught you off guard.
Completely.
And you made a run there for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of like, you downplay what you're good at and, the skills it takes to pull this off.
It was a lot.
Somewhere along the lines, you're like, okay, we have to figure out a few things. The lights are on. I figured this out.
Yeah.
So when does it start? When did the lights come on for you? When your things start feeling like, okay, now we got something versus like cutting your fingers while people are watching you?
I think we ran on adrenaline. Like if I reflect, I'm like, it's good we did that when we were really young because we were also open 7 days a week, 8 to 8.
Oh, you were going.
We were going. And I think that, in retrospect, I'm like, probably was not great for the nervous system or like anything. And so I think adrenaline fueled us through that. And during that period, I was like loving it. The groove was awesome. I'm like, oh, look at us. We've like at this point priced our menu items too low. Like we're just, I don't know if we're like successful in the financial sense at that time. And, we're just trying our best. But I think we learned so much and that was through a lot of failures, which I often like to tell people that are interested in, going on a similar or different entrepreneurial venture.
Isn't it interesting though? It's funny. I'm going to interrupt you.
No.
The highlights. People always see the end results and they rarely hear this piece, right? Like
it's
the
so
actual,
important.
the journey and that all the bumps along the way. So I think it's cool that you already have those conversations. Yeah. Which is great because this is like,
I would love to paint like a more realistic picture for people when it comes to what, for us at least, a brick and mortar place, like what that actually looks like. Because I think we're a little proud in our society to be like so open about the failures, and I think we should be. I'm like, why don't we talk about it realistically? And we definitely. So I don't think we perceived them all as failures by any means, but I think we were like, well, we're not doing that again, or
lesson learned,
or I mean, a lot of it, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yep.
So there was a lot of pleading ignorant and that works for me. But I think the lights turned on when we started hiring some employees. I think there's like a renewed sense of responsibility that you have to be a little bit more structured, and
like your overhead, you got rent payment, food costs, and all of a sudden you bring somebody
now I bring
in.
Staff in.
And then what? Then
oh
you're
my
like,
God. Yeah.
This is.
And like, I just figured out how to like reduce my waste each week because like, that's one of your biggest expenses. Like the things I'm learning, and still like YouTube is great also for learning things. Like poor Allie does a lot of our accounting and she's like, might as well be an accountant at this point because she's had to do so much stuff, but we've learned through the process. And I think when we had employees, I was like, time to be serious about it. And I think
the notepad back out.
Right? God, I think there's always like a sense of imposter syndrome, no matter what. Like, I think we still feel that sensation.
For sure.
I'm not sure, when that ever fades.
I don't think it, you know what? It's funny you say that. So I had this guy on the show, Russell Broom. He's one of Canada's most one of the best guitar players in Canada.
Oh my God.
Toured with Jan Arden for like 15 years. He's like in the music scene, he's the guy. He said to me, he's like, in your 20s and 30s, you're just trying to figure it out. The imposter syndrome is real because you're just, you're trying to do things, you're hoping you're getting better at things, but it's serious. He said, when you hit 40, it starts to go away.
Oh, bless. So, I can't wait.
and he was just, it was really funny. As soon as the topic came up, he knew right away. He's like, 20s and 30s, it's the real deal. You suffer from it all the time. The 40s, you're like, it's on.
I'm so glad to know that because I think we're all victim to, comparing and having that looming over us that we're just like not quite as good as someone else or like they have it figured out. But I think like a comforting notion to me is no one has it figured out, even those that you think do. And like, as is evidence actually through the pandemic, and not that I want to feel validation through anyone's failures, but in our neck of the woods, there's been so many closures, restaurant closures. And I've always thought like, oh, damn, I thought they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, for sure.
But they closed, and there's just a kind of that introspection where you're like, maybe I'm okay.
I do know what I'm doing. So what is your 5 years there?
Yeah.
It's going good. Like, is it good the whole time? What's the run? What's the year to?
It's 2016 to 2021.
Okay. So you were
Right.
there for a long...
Yeah. And like at this point, like a pandemic is happening.
And what was it called?
It was called Raw Eatery and Market
was?
at the time. Yeah.
Okay. So, so you went with that name.
we went with that name, and then we now have since rebranded. But
Sorry.
it's Mondays Plant Café now.
Yeah, now it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
Okay.
I know that. I know enough.
You said you don't look into anything.
I do like the bare minimum.
Okay, you got that.
So I knew that. What's interesting is just that, like 5 years in a space, building something, figuring out your menu, sourcing all your stuff. Like, how are people finding out about you? Is the vegan community like just, oh my God, there's finally a good option? So you're just like, they found you?
It's so interesting because I'm like, how did we market? Like, what was successful? And I often try to ask our customers, like, how did you find out about us? Because I want to know what our best source of being discovered is. And weirdly, a fair bit from like newspaper articles, which we had several. And
what's that feel like, by the way?
you're like, I'm famous. Actually, for the Herald, which I didn't know was like a big publication, we really flew by the seat of our pants, like, which is not my personality, but for years I was just like a yes person, like just completely flexible, just like not attached to anything. So this is kind of part of that. They're like, we're coming in for a photo shoot, and I fully forget that we're having a photo shoot for this like big, we're on like the front page, and like it's a big full page thing about us. I was like, didn't have a clue. And I come and I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm sure people wouldn't think I look bad, but I look my worst I could ever look. Like, did not prepare whatsoever. He's interviewing us. I'm like, we'll have no idea what I'm talking about. It was just like a complete disaster.
Yep.
And like, that's just like represents how we were for that amount of time. But things like that, which you're unprepared for, and you have to say quotes that people read.
Yeah.
And I think just like, the vegan community is actually rather strong. There's like a kind of underground world there that I don't, if you're not vegan, I'm not sure you know about. So there's this Facebook group called Calgary Vegans and Vegetarians. And it's like, I don't know how many members now, but I bet it's like 12,000 members strong. Wow. And so we relied on that a lot, and people posted about us, or we would post.
So the product was good.
I think so.
Like,
I think so.
Because obviously, like, you can create hype around something.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes
back it up.
Yeah, if they don't experience if they don't have a good experience, it's kind of.
Yeah. I think like we have, I'm happy to say we have great Google reviews, and people support us through that, which is really key these days. Like, how often do you look up a place you're going to eat and you're like, what's their rating? That dictates if you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
crazy.
So I'm like well aware that's like a huge factor for people. Yep. And so at our place now, I'm front of house and Allie's back of house. And that's our places. And I know that both of us really try to make a customer experience great so that they're coming back. And that takes like effort. And she's making like the best quality food, and I'm like trying to, make their day or something.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I think that's how we get a lot of our repeats. And we have had some really amazing loyal regulars that have followed us from our old location to our new one. And I just feel like it's got such community vibes. And I think that's how, I hope that's how we're sticking, at least in people's mind. And the food. Yeah.
Totally.
So, yeah.
So what does it look like coming out of your, like when you decide to switch locations? What's actually happening? Like what's driving that change?
So we're at the end of our lease, and our rent had gone up astronomically, which is lopsided considering we were just going into a pandemic where no one's making any money. So it was rough. That was a weird period. I feel like, I'm sure everyone can agree, but that was like a strange vortex of time that I'm like, I don't even remember. But I know at the beginning of the pandemic, we were in our old space and we were making takeout meals, but it was just not very functioning. And I think it had lost that vibe that we
like community
liked.
Vibe.
Totally lost it. And we had like everybody in Kensington who was working. That was our customer base. That was like, they'd come for lunch. It was reliable. And now everyone's working from home.
8 to 8, by the way.
We changed that over the years. That was in the more delusional phase.
Okay.
That doesn't include like prepping and cleaning, So it was crazy. But we had fun. Like we threw parties there, and it was a fun space. And like I was young, it was okay. I could never do that now. So we had lost that vibe and that community, and we didn't have that clientele anymore. Yep. And so I think we were just a little disheartened by the space, and we wanted to move on. And the end of our lease allowed us to do so. And yeah, we found this place in Bridgeland, and we love our landlord. So great. And it's much less rent, and it's a cute little house, and it kind of fits with that original manifestation, which is pretty cool.
Where is it? You can like give us.
You know where Luke's Drug Mart is?
I know exactly where this is. Somebody else.
Oh, okay. If people don't know, it's on Luke's Drug Mart is on 4th, and we are a block north of that. So we're Edmonton Trail and 4th. Everyone just calls it Edmonton Trail, I feel like, but where it goes splits, 4th is going towards the river.
Little white house.
Yeah. It's a little white house. Yeah, and it's very cute.
I did my research.
You did. You know some stuff.
Just a couple of things. So now that you're there, you rebranded.
We rebranded.
What else has kind of changed? Like, why the rebrand?
Okay,
why
the
rebrand? And then, like,
Yeah.
what do you feel in this new place?
The rebrand was simply because we were like, why did we stick to this name Raw? We want to cook some stuff.
It's aggressive.
It's so aggressive. And like having to stay within that category. Oh my God, I'm not that creative. Like I can only think of so many raw things.
Yep.
Our intention also was to be seasonal and to utilize like local stuff. So I'm like, carrots and like, what can you eat raw that's like local and season? Like it was just we just like pigeonholed ourselves completely. So then we were like, we need to escape this. And we were trying to discuss like, what do we even like? What do we like? And our day off was on Monday. And so we were like, Mondays is something that we love. Like mutually, we love this day. And we thought that it could be a kind of double purpose where, meatless Mondays, or not that we want to subscribe to diet culture, but, people always want to eat healthy on Monday, start over after the weekend. Yep. So we thought it could really be a double meaning where people would, relate the two. Yep. And Mondays have turned out to be like one of our busiest days, which, we didn't expect because it's the industry, Mondays are like, dead. Yeah, so dead. So yeah, what was the rest of the question? I forget.
The full name is Mondays?
Mondays Plant Café.
And what's it feeling like in the new space?
Good.
Like that community vibe is back. You're like re-energized.
We really felt like, again, we had that same vibe that when we first started at our old place, it was chaotic, but in a good way because it was overwhelming. And when we first opened at this location as well, same feeling. I was like, oh shit, like this is too much for us to handle. We need help, like in a good way. Yep. And it maintained itself for sure. But I think once people also get into their habits and, they saw the new place, then they're less inclined to like make it a regular stop. So it's chilled out now, which is probably for the best. Yep. But yeah, we've been broken into 6 times.
Seriously?
6 times in 2 years. I know. Yeah. So outside of that, it's great.
So what does it look like going forward? What do you guys, you're making fun of yourself the entire show about like not having a clue what's going on. And like, I don't know what we're doing. Here we are. So here you are. You have a cool little spot.
We have a cool little spot.
In this house. And you've been operating now for years.
Years, yeah.
Do you see this turning into something? Do you have visions of where it's going to go? Or?
Yeah. I mean, so both Allie and I work, and I think it's a labor of love. Like, anyone who has their own business can attest to it. It's just you put in the hours and you like it. Yep. Weirdly, it's like a, strange relationship. But I think our goals are to have it to be sustainable on its own, where we don't have to work every day, which I totally see the potential in that. And I think what we're waiting for is Calgary to, really take on the plant-based movement and we see it. Like I see the reception of plant-based eating being more popular and people are starting to subscribe to it. And so I think we're just waiting for it to catch up and to people to get there because we're still like one of very few vegan places in Calgary. So yeah, our goals, we always want to make sure it's community based, and we used to do like a lot of fun events. We'd like host, in the pandemic, we had this thing called Street Food Saturdays, where on Saturday it would just be like a big block party. So I think we're looking to incorporate more things like that or workshops, or make the space like when we originally thought in our $12,000 space that we could like sublet, you know, make the space a little bit more community based in that way and have people do whatever they want there, you know, do your meditation workshops, whatever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you, are you surprised where you are?
I think
Like,
it's healthy to be surprised, I think, you know, but yes.
for me to hear the story the first time, you know, you come out of university and you're like, fuck, missing it. And then here you are, fast forward all these years, and this is what it looks like. Could you have ever put this on the map?
No, it's such a trip to like think back and put yourself in your shoes as a, you know, wherever, you know, 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine being here.
Yep.
And I do that all the time because I think it's like the most wild experience in your brain to be like, think back when you were 20, was this your life? And no, like I said, I'm like pretty structured and usually I think a little bit more conventional, or I don't know. But I didn't expect to be doing this, but I love it. And nothing beats truly being your own boss. And, you know, I remember being at other jobs and looking at the clock and being like, fuck my life. I have 20 minutes, you know, and just like resenting my life because of it. You spend so much of your life at work. Hopefully you enjoy it. And I say all the time that not one day, and like in my, like so sincerely, I've never dreaded going to work. I've actually more often than not been excited. I'm like, ooh, can't wait to go to work. Like I'm going to go create this weird little cake, you know? So I think there's something to that. And
it's
I
rare.
think it's so rare. And I think a lot of the time, Allie and I battle like convention or people having conventional thoughts because we don't have that much time off, you know? And like, it is a labor of love. You're doing a lot more work than you're probably getting paid for. And I don't think I'd have it any other way, you know? Like it's crazy to say that I'm like, I want people to reflect on their own careers and, you know, it doesn't have to be at the point where you dread every day and you look at the clock and 5 hours feels like 25. It doesn't have to be like that.
And so on that, what is it that, what has to change? Is it courage? Is it risk tolerance? Like, what is it?
Oh my God, both. I don't know. It might be. Like, it might be exactly that because I guess it's stressful to try and figure out your passion. Like I think that even, you know, makes me stressed when someone's like, what's your purpose and your passion?
That's a big thing.
Like what? That's a huge question. And that's a lot of pressure to know.
Yep.
I don't know if we can know, but I think we can think about what our interests are, which is evidenced by like what actually lights you up. That's like the simplest way to start approaching, I think, taking steps towards something that's more fulfilling is like, you know, I'm lit up when I am reading up on insert subject that you often read up on or something. Like look at your internet history. What do you go to? What are you looking at? Like I like to look at food blogs. So I'm probably inherently interested in food and creating it. And I'd say like once you know your interest, which is like less stressful than your purpose, then maybe thinking of how you could pursue that in a financially appropriate way, you know, and working towards it and then actually jumping in. And I think it's being, you know, less adverse to the risk is key. I also don't want people to like, you know, throw away their life savings and do something crazy, but like you won't know until you try. So is it worth the effort? Probably. You have one life.
It's true. I think it's, I think the other way I would phrase it is just like experiences. You have to experience a bunch of things before you can actually land on
100%.
what is it you're interested in.
My God. I don't want to do research. I don't want to work at a daycare. I only know that because I did that, you know? Yeah, I agree.
It's been really cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I end the show with one question.
Oh, God.
When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Yes. I've thought about this. And I think like to not be cliche, of course, everyone thinks about like the Stampede and, you know.
Yes, keep going.
Right. I know. I just think that people think of those things. And whilst I do, I actually have like such a more small thing that I think about when I think of Calgary. I just think it as like a clean city. I'm like, it's just got such cleanliness to me. And I think it's like the most approachable city for people. And that's like what I think of.
Yep.
I just think it's clean. And like, you know, I think of my favorite spots and things like that. But
it's fascinating to hear all the different answers.
I bet there's a range. There's got to be.
Because some people say, literally, they'll say the stampede.
People do, right?
And some people go like people, places, and things. So yeah, I think.
Has anyone said it's clean?
No, that's the first. But it's so.
It's crazy where the brain goes.
But it's interesting, right? Like growing up in the Okanagan, pretty clean spot.
Yeah.
Compared to maybe here or the same, and then Toronto, obviously the shithole.
Yeah, that shithole.
So this feels really clean.
It's interesting. Kind of gives you some idea. Maybe it's our most inner world of like, what do we value?
Yeah.
And I guess cleanliness.
Which is random, hey?
But I do, so.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
I know you're working like a crazy person, so.
Yep. You too.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.